Whose idea was this podcast originally? Yours. Congratulations.
That was, yeah. We're recording now.
Oh, are we?
Shall I speak an intro? Oh.
If you like, you're kind of like the dad of the group.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should
The
introduce
lame dad.
You're like I can't remember his name, but you're like Michael Jackson's father, and we're like Jackson too.
What was Michael Jackson's father's name?
Jackson.
Bully
Jackson.
Bully Jackson.
We'll get loads of people texting us now, emailing into the podcast going, Michael Jackson's dad was called this. I can't believe you don't know.
I think his name was Barry.
I could go on
Barry Jackson.
I could go. That's just because we did Barry last week.
Yeah, that was Barry week. It's not Barry week anymore.
It's
right?
Every week
Gland
is Barry
week.
week.
It's Gland.
This is National
Is the next
Gland
week
week.
going to be Barry's Gland week?
We're not just going to incrementally add them all together to come up with a super.
I think that's what we should do.
A super story.
Maybe we could do that for Christmas special. Every time
Everything in.
We should actually do a Christmas special though, or do Christmas stories.
I was going to do a Christmas story anyway.
Were you?
Because I did that one a couple of years ago. The
one
Tokyo.
about the priest with testicular cancer for no reason.
Yeah. Hey, it was a reason.
What was the reason?
Well, it was fatalistic.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't a plot device. It was.
Okay.
It was
yeah.
It was a character trait, not trait, but yes.
I get you.
Cool. So you're listening to the 1 Hour Stories podcast
Hello,
with me, Paddy Johnston,
Rob Sherman.
Rob Gordon.
Hi. So this is our second podcast. How the podcast works is that we pick a theme. We each have an hour to write a short story, and then we read them out. Simple.
And we can't delete anything or change anything.
No.
As we go through, it has to be as written. So
There's no editing at all.
yeah, that's.
And we're also filming this, so
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna put the video up online or we'll do something with that. But then that proves that we just wrote these right now and that we're just reading them out.
Except
we haven't had
I
time
wasn't
to edit.
I wasn't in the shot, so I could have been doing anything.
Yeah, you could have been totally cheating.
But you can tell that we're reading them out right now, as opposed to, given the high quality of these short stories, reading them out of a very good book.
Yeah. Or just like that we didn't do them in the same room. We just all wrote them and then spliced them together with my fantastic editing. So the theme this week is
My favourite gland.
you chose this theme at the end of the last podcast.
Yeah.
Did you come up with it on the spot then, or had you been thinking about it for a while?
I did. I did come up with it on the spot, but that's probably only because of what I've been doing with my time, which is writing something all about bodies.
Yeah.
So
it's the Black Crown Project. BlackCrownProject.com, is it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
That's what I'm doing. Nearly finished. So I'll stop writing about bodies and diseases and sphincters soon. The word sphincter is in my story. So,
excellent.
Yeah. So I thought that would go well.
Cool. Well, so we're going to go left to right, aren't we?
We are.
So
or right to left if you're watching this.
Da, 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 da.
I don't know what you want to do. I don't.
No. You
Go for it.
You sure you don't want me? You sure you want me to go first?
Well, you went last time, and I was in the middle. So
That's true.
we'll do it
Okay.
in reverse. Yeah. Go
Okay, I'm going to go first. My story is called. I don't know. It's called My Favourite.
Well, it says 1 hour stories number 2 there.
That's a very good enlightening title, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't kick the mic.
Sorry, it's right there.
Okay.
Right.
I think you're going to be surprised and not surprised by this story.
I'm really surprised by you.
Okay. There goes. I've been wanting to ask Melinda out for some months, but hadn't found the right way to do it. I'd had the same conversation over and over with all of my friends. Just, when you're walking out of class, they'd say, just stop her and ask if she wants to go for a drink. That's it. Simple as that. But it wasn't that simple. She could read that any number of ways. That I'm an alcoholic, which I'm not, I barely drink at all. That I enjoy bars and clubs, which I don't. That I want to get her drunk, which I don't. It just seemed wrong. Too cheap, too obvious, and not enough of a way to express what I felt for her. It just seemed inadequate. I'd also not had much luck asking girls out before, though it's difficult to ask them for a drink when you're 17 and all the bars in town have bouncers that stand outside and menace the nights revellers like rhinoceri. Even if a girl had been interested in dating a sixth former still trying desperately to grow stubble that didn't look like he'd drawn it on himself with a Sharpie. I thought I'd been in love before, as teenagers are wont to do under the influence of Morrissey and Flaubert, But I knew I hadn't been once I found Melinda. She sat next to me in our first lecture as medical students, exuding the nervousness of not knowing whether to sit in the seat next to me, as the lecture theatre was likely to be full, or to leave a gap and remain aloof and British about it. In the end, she sat next to me and smiled, and the consistent brush of her hip against mine throughout the lecture proved fatal to my ability to take notes. After that, it seemed to me she was everywhere I went, in all of my classes, in the queue for the campus cafe, in the bookshop in town, under the tree in the fields between the campus and town, just everywhere. I began to wake up every day wondering if I'd see her, and as the term drew closer to Christmas, I knew I had to make a move, as the guys I shared my flat with called it. But I was still unsure as to whether she liked me as more than a friend. All of our course mates, or at least the ones I'd spoken to, thought she did. We laughed together in class at the professor's bad jokes and the bizarre illustrations in our textbooks. She was warm, and I felt relaxed in her company. But we'd never been together in a social setting, and I couldn't be sure if she was avoiding me outside of class. So I devised a way to find out, with one simple question. We'd been studying glands that week, and learning all their various locations and functions. We'd laughed at some of them, and pulled mock sick faces at others, and caused our professor to sigh. The one that had caused us the most laughter, for a reason I can't quite fathom, was the sweat gland. It was most likely the illustration, a zooming in on a fat man's armpit, that caused it. It set her off giggling for some minutes. Remembering this, I decided to ask her one simple question, and that would tell me everything I needed to know. After the next class, I would ask her, "What's your favourite gland?" If she said the sweat gland, I'd know we had a connection. It was a very simple test. When we got to the lecture, we fell in together on the way, and sat together just like on the first day. Her hip rubbed mine again, closer this time, for longer, and once again I couldn't concentrate. I glanced over at her and she caught my eye and smiled. She'd never looked more beautiful. Flushed cheeks beneath defined cheekbones. Sorry, I'm turning the page there. Eyes large and chestnut. Still wearing her beret from outside, her hair long and tousled from the rain. I couldn't wait until after class. I scribbled a note to her on a page in my notebook and tore it off noisily. I passed it to her whilst pretending to concentrate on the lecture, looking forward. She saw it and snorted with laughter, drawing the eyes of the professor and a few other students. She maintained composure, and also put on a front of concentration, while she began doodling on the page. I glanced over and she hid her working behind her free hand, not wanting me to see. Eventually, she passed the note back. She'd drawn, in a surprisingly lifelike yet pointedly cartoonish style, a shirtless moustached man with an arrow pointing towards his armpit. I sniggered and wrote hastily on the paper, now sitting between us, "Mine too." And then, pausing only for a second, I wrote underneath it, "Drink after class." She hesitated after reading it, looking at me, still giggling slightly, and simply nodded, before returning to the charade of concentration. As disgusting as it sounds, the sweat gland is now my favourite gland, because it reminds me of the moment I knew she liked me back. And now, whenever I treat a particularly sweaty patient, I think of my wife, and it makes every second of a difficult job totally worth it.
Oh, that was awesome. That was really good. That was very good.
That was lovely.
See, you give me something disgusting and I can turn anything into a schmaltzy love story.
It wasn't schmaltzy though. I guess because the gland was the device.
I feel like in this dynamic, because I always write kind of schmaltzy stuff, that I'm like Richard Curtis and you guys are like Stephen King or something. Like the two people that should never really hang out together.
Okay,
But-
I'm going to write next week, I promise you, I'm going to write a love story. Or like it's something that's normal. Okay, that's my
normal.
challenge on top of it being in an hour. I'm going to do that. But yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah.
Oh,
great.
good.
It was very evocative of our time at university.
Yeah, I drew
The little
on that
details.
a lot, I guess.
Yeah, well, we spent a lot of
We
time
weren't,
together.
we weren't medical students. So
We weren't medical students.
someone's probably also now going to email into the podcast and go, medical students don't have lectures, they spend the whole time dissecting bodies or something. But I don't know what medical students do.
I knew a
I
medical
think they drink a lot.
They work really hard and then
they drink.
they become alcoholics for 7 years or however long it takes.
They actually work hard and then play hard.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the saying. I knew a medical student who said that they named their group named their dead body, or their cadaver, as I think the term is, and they had him for the whole year, and gradually got smaller and smaller and smaller because they were, dissecting him.
What was his name?
I can't remember what they called him. I'm hoping something quite dull. Either something quite dull, like Clive.
Barry.
Sorry to anyone called Clive or Barry.
Barry would be a good name.
Barry's horrific discovery was the fact that he was a corpse.
He was a corpse being dissected. Yeah.
Nice.
Very good. I liked it a lot.
Oh, thanks. It's your turn now.
Yes.
Hit us with your favourite gland.
Mine is just called My Favourite Gland. And then the wave came. Out beyond the lagoon in the open ocean, it looked enormous, but the two headlands jostled it and moulded it into a lazy burp that barely bobbed me as it came. I sat 200 metres out from shore, sat in the ground shell sand, and my chin still did not go below the water. I was so warm I wanted to fall asleep. I did not want to become a legend. There were others who had died in this paradise. They had come here to bathe and shout and splash, but the beauty of the place, the trees clinging to the rocks, the vines trailing in the water, the occasional rodeo of rainbow parrotfish that shoaled in hiding from the sharks, made them just stop and sit. They would watch the recreational light, never put to anything as commonplace as illumination, over the water, the sun dipping, and before long it would be night, and they would be floating face down, bobbing in that lackadaisical surf. No, I had to remain alert. I pinched my arm, rubbed the powdered coral over my insect bites, snapped my bikini strap. At any minute it could appear, reveal itself with a wave. I had been looking for him for over 20 years, in amongst the bowels of rats, the pituitaries of rare insects, some of which in Borneo had been the size of rats, and even in the torsos of men. Willing men, of course. I was a scientist. But no matter where I looked, my favourite gland in the entire world remained elusive. I did not know its colour, what shape it was, where the veins and sphincters joined it. But I knew it was out there. I had tasted it. Borneo, that was it. The rats had reminded me. I had visited so many tribes over the years, being drawn in a sort of pulley rickshaw through cloud forest after cloud forest, that even the term cloud forest ceased to hold any pleasure for me. I had walked around Uluru naked with a group of very patient aboriginals, I refused to call them anything else, and eaten the hot blood out of a trapped lion's neck in Chad. I had endured every pointless ritual laid out before me as part of my search. What nobody knew, and perhaps one of the reasons that I was often alone, was that I had had something done with my labia in Kenya, which still made it difficult to go to the toilet, and which I decided never to look at again. Down there it was all just so much waste now, like butcher's cuttings. The sea here, as all seas have, was dulling the throb, and I could think a little better. After the rituals, after the humiliations and the cackles of the white woman's thin arse and all the other strange confidences of people in their own villages in their own time, there was usually a trip to be had. The hallucinations were sampled through a variety of pipettes, a sharp stick inserted into the arm, a smoke inhaled, a drink, a cake of blood and herbs, spit passed from mouth to mouth. I had done it so many times that I was inured to it, and saw it as just another part of the job. My employers wanted this gland that I had made my favourite very, very much, and were willing to pay me, and to a lesser extent the natives, an awful lot of money to procure it in quantity. Unfortunately, they did not know where it could be found. All they knew was that it existed, and that what it excreted, as all glands do, was a complete nightmare. It wasn't they who had made the gland male. It was me. I was a straight woman, and I knew that it would annoy my dopehead father to reinforce the patriarchy like that. When I was drunk in some bar or sitting on a dirt airstrip waiting for the last plane to land, I would often doodle it with a moustache and top hat. That is what a man looks like, I thought. That is what I can reduce him to. The waves are getting up. That storm they promised on the news is coming. When the visions came, wherever I was, I knew what I was looking for. It was looking, I don't know what that means. The gland's liquor gave you a certain something, a certain warm glow which buoyed you up higher than anything that a dullard, whinging pop star might ingest. In colours it was a deep green, a manly green, a green of my father's old leather chair, an ironic tribute to his father, the Tory Whig. I had tasted it from a petri dish in my employer's labs. That petri dish represented the greatest collected quantity of the gland's expression anywhere in the world. That petri dish could have paid off much of the national debt that had accrued in the Western Hemisphere since the Second World War, and a large dollop of it had been placed on my tongue. It was clear, of course, but I was soon thrown up against a wall of green. The hallucination was not religious or sexual, it was almost marine. Green swaying fronds as if I was underwater, and then a hand reaching out to take mine. It was bigger than mine, a man's hand. I would never forget those 12 hours that I was gone, and when I came back I had my mission and the next 18 years of my life mapped out before me. Find the gland, locate the animal, bring back a sample, make 10 men and women very rich. 18 years of travelling, of having 10 houses where I did not always remember where the shower was, of doing cabin safety demonstrations in my sleep, of knowing where to buy a gun in every airport, on and on through trip after trip, drug after drug, ceremony after ceremony. I would approach the next village, the locals full of that eager arrogance when they saw the white woman approach, so naive and innocent. They did not know how riddled I was. I never had the chance to become an addict, as I never tried anything more than once. The morning after the drug was administered, I would note its origin, the effects of my trip, and move on, rubbing at new scars or stemming a new nosebleed. Every transcendent experience I have ever had, with the exception of that one time in the clean lab with a pipette suckering my tongue, has been brown and female, a fug of bad breath, vomit, stupidity, and getting stupider. Many of these products form religions around them, priesthoods who are the only ones allowed to toke or inject or sniff or suck. Every one is the same all across the world. It's a little depressing, really. I haven't the heart to tell them how boring it all is. I don't know why I see drugs in colour and gender. Perhaps it was why I was employed. But there is something very primal amongst all these primitives, and it's not a good thing. It's boring, like tobacco. It's venerated blindly, as women have been for thousands of years. Venerated because they're different, because there are more holes, more architecture to them, because they are so very mysterious and coy. It's all a lot of rubbish. I'm a woman, and I don't feel like a goddess most of the time. I just feel very, very tired. I've been prodded and poked and groped and administered for most of my adult life, and I do not feel like anybody should form a faith around me. And yet they all do, and they scrape leaves and burn roots or bleed frogs to find a good trip to go with it. I rock on my rump in the water, keeping my arms flat at my sides, oddly relishing how hot it still is under each of them. The waves have a little white to their crests now, and it looks more like home. I'm a long way from home. I hear monkeys in the trees on each headland, calling to each other like competing lighthousemen without the gumption to make fire. And behind me there is the complaint of a rhino static in the forest like a ruin. It's not time to go back to shore just yet. Tomorrow, after 18 years of searching, I will be fired. I'm not supposed to know this. Somebody back home sent me the papers by accident. They will be fired too, but it won't change a thing. 18 years of investment, of travelling the world, of trying every ethnogen under the sun, and they still do not have their potion. The clear liquid from some hidden organ for some hidden purpose that will make them extremely rich. I have nothing to give them, and I cannot lie. I have ruled out the primates, and because of its effects I'm sure that it comes from a male animal. I have even done microscopic analysis of every pool of mud, every latrine that I could find south of the equator, in case the liquid did not come from a gland at all, but was rather a cocktail of something sewer-like. No, I'm sure it's from a gland. A bird? Something that helps them fly? A snake, to make their prey pliable and placid? A man? An organ forgotten, hidden under the pelvis, as useless as the appendix? I sit in the water, and it all does not matter. I'm very lonely anyway, and it might be nice to try something else. There is not really much else that I could experience, though. That thought does not warm me up with the Indian Ocean spicing over me, losing heat with every second closer to night. I will receive the phone call in 6 hours, I think, as I hug my knees up to my chest. There are no stars, just clouds, and I look at the scars on my arms, where once there were sores and more bug bites and nips from village dogs tied to a breeze block with string. I was never very attractive to begin with, and all this journeying has only made things worse. I'm not old and cannot get too pensive. I might live for another 50 years, but with everything I've taken, that's a lottery at best. I forget in that instant about all the fascinating people I have met, transformed into boredom by their sheer weight, the pierced lips and ears, the stretched necks and lobes, the scarified breasts and legs, the mutilation, the grinning, the different coloured skins. All mixed together, they only make that same brown that I still see every time I shut my eyes, and so I think of green fronds waving, and a man's hand reaching out to take mine. And now, all of a sudden, there it is. My eyes are open, but the beach and the lagoon and the clouds and the sea and the storm are all gone, and I'm against that wall of breathing masculine grass. It does not smell of anything, but it treats me so well, so kindly and gently. I just fall into it. I forget about the job, my impending unemployment, the wasted life, and just let it caress me. I feel like a tiny fish caught by an anemone, injected with a poison that just makes a little sleep, and I go limp. I stop breathing. I wait. And there it comes, the big hand reaching out of the wall, 5 fingers splayed, coming to take mine and lead me away. I'm so very warm and I cannot feel the water anymore. But then, There are the clouds, and the waves are gone, the water are only ripples. I look below the water and see that there is a hand, indistinct and pink, taking mine. I'm clutching it as if we are walking along at night like lovers. It seems to grow out of the pale sand, as if that someone that I have always been looking for has found me. The fingertips press to mine. The starfish coils around my palm, and from each of its suckers a droplet of clear liquid, each worth as much as I would make in a lifetime, swirls into my veins. I let it twist and coil, and all of a sudden feel very, very safe. The fronds dance. That was very long, I'm sorry.
Yeah, God. No, it was good.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Did it make sense? Did you get what I was going for? That was what I was worried about.
No, it's really interesting. I like the kind of drug synesthesia.
Yeah. I promise that's not from experience. That was better than I thought it was when I was writing it. Trying to get my point across.
Well, one of us has to do rubbish, and I suspect it's going to.
Well, I'm sure it won't, but
No, I'm sure it's all good.
We will see.
Cool.
But yeah, no, that was great.
Yeah, it's great.
thanks.
Did you think that when you first started it, you were going to write from the point of view of a woman? Or...
No. I had the idea when I was like, fuck, what am I going to write? And then I thought, a starfish that has a gland that has a poison in it, like a poison arrow, poison dart frog. And then I thought it'd be more interesting if the anthropologist or the scientist was a woman. And also I'm quite aware, I think as a male writer, I don't know if you guys find this, but my instinct is always to write as a man. Or not my instinct, but that's the default, and I don't want it to be the default. Yeah. I think that's a bad thing. So no, I didn't know I was going to write as a woman until I started. Anyway, Rob.
Yes. Mine is also called My Favourite Gland. We've got some good titles here today.
Emphasis on the gland there.
I think I'm always going to...
My favourite gland.
Gland!
Gland.
My favourite gland! I think I'm always going to call mine what we've decided is the theme. That's my rule. But it doesn't need to be you guys' rule.
Yeah, the only reason we deviated from that was because I wanted to call mine the Fox Party last time.
Yeah, which was a much better title. for your story, obviously.
Yeah. Take it over.
Yeah,
yes. Here is My Favourite Gland.
I can't see it.
We can't put the video out now.
God. Yeah. Okay. Jacob prayed every night. He did not have a religion as such. Instead, think of himself as a religious grazer, a jack of all faiths and a master of none. Around his neck he had the symbols of all the major creeds and a few of the minor ones. He was ordering in some voodoo pendants to add to his growing collection. Jacob was not truly a man of prayer, but he felt that he was entitled to ask as many for help as possible, and then he would pick the best deal later down the line. After all, what market doesn't need a little healthy competition? Jacob saw it as capitalism at work. He prayed for the same things each time, for good health, for good wealth, for good food, for his children to be safe and secure, for his ex-wife to fall off a cliff onto jagged rocks, for his clothes to keep from tearing in embarrassing moments. But most of all, he prayed to his favourite gland, the pituitary gland. See, Jacob had a job that is frowned upon in modern circles. He liked to think of himself as an ambassador for the anti-PC, a hero for the old ways of entertainment. In reality, he made money out of exploiting some of the most vulnerable people in our society. Jacob ran a freak show. So he prayed to the pituitary gland, a gland that in certain unfortunate people could go haywire, expelling extraordinarily large or small amounts of the human growth hormone. It was down to the pituitary gland, that tiny sack of flesh, that Jacob had the largest caravan in the commune. Because sure, he had other freaks. Joan, the bearded woman, always pulled in a fair crowd in each town they visited, always a mixture of those repulsed and those one or two men who were there to proposition her a rare chance for them to live out their fetish. Marty had hard, bony spikes protruding from the left side of his face. He made the other freaks laugh when the working day was done by spearing pickled eggs on them. But on stage, in a cage, he was all about the drama, a sorrowful expression as children cried and adults looked away, embarrassed. The best freak of the lot, though, was Arnold. Arnold, the 7'5" giant, picking up kids with one hand, using oversized novelty tools, sitting in his modified utility vehicle, the front seats taken out to give him more legroom. He was loved by the crowd, seen as a hero, a brave soul, constantly calm, constantly chipper, constantly happy, a gentle giant. Only Jacob and the other freaks knew better. Sure, that was the cliche, the giant yet gentle soul plagued by their life. And there are plenty like that. Jacob knew of a troupe in Paris that had Gerard, the vegetarian, a more noble soul you could never meet. Arnold was different, though. He bucked the trend. He was violent, he was mean-spirited, he was cruel. And to top it all off, he was a diva. If Jacob didn't need him to keep living in the standard of living that he had grown accustomed, he would have given him his marching orders a long time ago. The worst was what he did to Catherine. Catherine was a true gentle giant, loved by all, particularly Jacob. They had dated briefly until they realised that they both needed that separation of work and private life. That, and Jacob could not bear to be the little spoon, as comforting as Catherine's 6'9" frame was. But it was not just them. She was loved by the other freaks too. Always one of them, a great protector. When on the streets of Crewe, Joan had been accosted by a group of youths throwing what remained of their greasy, dripping lunch at her, seeing if food stuck in a woman's beard as well as it did a man's. Catherine arrived out of nowhere, and with one threatening growl the lads ran, scampering off towards some other poor sod to target. Catherine looked out for everyone, and this angered Arnold. He could not bear that he was not the centre of attention. Even on carnival posters they were placed alongside each other, married for the sake of entertainment. In truth, they hated each other, but that made them no different from most celebrity couples. They barely spoke, only remaining in the same tent for their own shows. Afterwards, Catherine would return to her friends and colleagues, and Arnold would go to bed alone. One night, Arnold decided to get his own back. He pulled favours, threatened, bribed the other acts, got all the items he needed. Ether from the funhouse, a clown's 100 tied-together handkerchief, a ghoul's mask from the ghost train, and most importantly, 2 blades from the magician, Zork, capable of cutting through flesh and bone. All parts of his devilish plan procured, he broke into Catherine's caravan. You wouldn't think it, but giants can be quiet, stealthy when needed. They are not hulking beasts, but are capable of controlling their slender frames with great subtlety. Perhaps that is why no one noticed him as the caravan door swung open and gently closed. The rest of what happened is guesswork, but Jacob knew this much. Arnold was seen leaving the caravan at 5 a.m. Catherine was awoken late at 10. It was time for them to leave as Doncaster beckoned. The poor assistant screamed immediately in floods of tears. Catherine had been reduced to a paltry 6'4", her legs removed from above the knee. 2 crude tourniquets, multicoloured handkerchiefs now covered in darkened red, were tied above each wound. On her face, a ghoul mask stinking of ether. Thankfully, Catherine survived. Jacob rushed her to hospital where she was put in intensive care, but there was no time to wait. The show had to go on. Jacob would occasionally hear from her by note from other carnivals, but he would never see her again. Like so many of those for whom the pituitary gland has acted over-eager, her lifespan was dramatically reduced. The loss of her legs did not kill her, but the tumour did. And all the while, from the day after her attack until she died, Arnold was there, safe in the knowledge that he was all they relied upon. He was visibly happier from the first show that he had been able to do alone, a smugness that never left him, the self-satisfaction that only one kind of person can have, one that realises they can treat others as simple commodities and get away with it. Arnold's happiness did not make him a kinder man, instead he was crueler, more vicious. He threw Saffron, a dwarf with 6 fingers on her left hand, into a wall after she beat him at a game of rummikub. He broke the arm of a poor carny boy after the child had accidentally spilled hot toffee from his candied apple stall on Arnold's shoes. The worst of all was his act. Arnold, the poor widower, bravely continuing in spite of the tragic attack on his wife. He was more loved by the audience than ever before. Whenever he was pitied, he would simply state, well, the show must go on, and was met by a plethora of sympathetic sighs. He took a new partner in each town and spent the evenings making love to them within earshot of Jacob's caravan. It was worse in the cold months. So Jacob did what he had to get by. He tried to distract himself by throwing himself into a camaraderie with the other freaks. But there was still that divide of employer and employee. He tried the other tents, but he was viewed by suspicion by other carnival controllers. So he mainly prayed every night before he went to sleep, praying to the pituitary gland, praying to have another giant as kind as Catherine. One night, though, he prayed for something else. He prayed for forgiveness for what he was about to do. After he finished, he went to the other attractions. There were no favours to pull, barely any words to be spoken. He saw the shame in the eyes of the other acts, saw that they would help how they could. A hammer from the roller coaster attendants, nails from the Hall of Mirrors, a box large enough for a 7'5" frame from the team of carpenters that followed the carnival, the keys to the digger from the carnival chiefs, and lots of ether. He entered the tent of the other freaks. They all knew it was their time as soon as he uttered 2 simple words. For Catherine.
Good stuff.
That's the end.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that was dark.
That
was great, though.
Honestly, the milk thing from the last podcast is still more abhorrent to me.
Yeah. Well, that's never going to be topped, surely, because
Yeah.
of how much you loathe milk.
There couldn't be anything as gruesome as a bath full of old milk to me.
What if it was conscious old milk?
Conscious.
Like a milk monster.
Milk
a crusty
monster.
milk monster.
That attacked you.
That's your challenge for the next
Made love to you. That was great.
That was great.
That was really good.
That made my skin crawl in a good way. Which I think is what you're going for, right?
Yes.
It's interesting how the really technical biological element sits with the human element. I think that's what I've liked about the title, about choosing this theme, because it's interesting to see how people make something that's very biological and very scientific into a human story, because that's what you have to do, right? So it's interesting.
Yeah, and the fact that all of the so-called freaks share this problem with the pituitary gland is actually more humanizing.
That was a lovely
that they all
device.
have in common. Yeah.
The idea of him praying to the thing that gives him his livelihood. That's great. That was great. Yeah, and the end was really nicely set out as well. All the different bits that he gets, the help he gets. That was great. Yeah,
Wonderful. Good stuff.
Cool.
Awesome.
So I think it's my turn to choose the
It
theme,
is, yeah.
isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I've had an idea.
Okay.
And I've actually had for about a week. I want us to write about a town underwater.
Oh, cool. Okay.
There you go.
That's a great one.
Easy.
That's yes. That's
I think that fits with all
Can't
of our
wait.
styles. I'm sure I can write some kind of story about people falling in love while they're in a canoe or something.
I'm gonna do a love story. I'm gonna do a normal love
Hey.
story without anything gross.
Really.
Yeah, as training to.
And you can write about people drowning.
Yeah, Rob can write about somebody falling.
Someone
overboard.
drowning in crusty milk.
Yeah, called Paddy.
Called Paddy.
Called Shaddy
No,
Ponson.
it's a town underwater, not a town under milk.
There was three friends: Bob Herman, Shaddy Ponson, and Bob Horden.
Bob Horden. Oh dear.
And they fell in some milk and found a town. But then Paddy died because the milk was crusty.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
end.
we don't even need to do the podcast
That's it.
anymore.
Now we're done.
That's
you
episode
next
3
week.
right there. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
I feel
So-
like we're at a sleepover sitting here.
Yeah.
It feels
Yeah.
like we're all in a big bed together.
We need like a blanket
covers
across
up.
or something.
Yeah, maybe next time we can.
We'll have a sleepover,
Yeah.
braid each other's hair and talk about boys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, if you like the podcast, how about giving it a review on iTunes?
That would be nice.
Giving it
Yeah.
all of the stars,
Should
so
we-
that we can get really popular and have lots of fans and take over the world.
Should we put the text of our stories somewhere?
Yeah, that
That
might
would
be.
be
an idea.
a good idea.
I was
will we-
thinking that we could release an ebook when we've done.
Yeah, when
a
we've
few
done a few.
episodes.
Shall we save it until we've got enough to put together into an ebook and then
Yeah. Okay, that's a good
put
idea.
that out into the world?
Yeah, I'm saving mine. So
Yeah, I've got all of mine.
yeah,
Yeah, I think I've still got. Yeah, mine's on my iPad somewhere. So.
cool. Okay.
Yeah, we will do that eventually. So yeah, if you keep listening, you'll be rewarded with an ebook eventually.
It will cost £19. I'm very good at pricing digital goods.
Yeah. So yeah, if you like the podcast, please give us a nice review. And do you want to plug anything while you're here? Because I want to plug that this November I'm doing 30 Days of Comics, which is a comic every day. So if you follow me on Twitter or Tumblr, I'm doing a story throughout November, and there's a page uploaded every day. So you should check that out.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, that's good.
You should plug the Black Crown.
Oh yeah, the Black Crown Project, which is what I'm doing for a living at the moment, which is coming to an end in a couple of weeks. We've nearly finished everything, and it's been a long time coming, but you can find it at blackcrownproject.com. And then after that, I'm sure there'll be all sorts of things, but I have a website which is bonfiredog.co.uk. Anything I'm doing is on there. Rob?
I am doing National Novel Writing Month. It's not going well. I'm only about 10,000 words in. So
Where are you
That's
supposed to
right,
be?
about 20 by now.
Oh, that's fine. 10,000
all right,
words.
you can
But I'm
catch
hoping
it up easy.
I can pick it up this week.
You're a fast writer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, I went on tour last week with my band, and it went very well.
With a man called Tor.
With a man called Tor.
Yeah.
The tour was called Tour on Tour Tour. We're We're called Titans and Kings. We play rock music. We're doing a music video in December, and we're going to have a new single out in January, probably. So keep an eye out for that.
So if you like rock and roll music, listen to Titans and Kings.
Yes.
Yeah.
And follow us on Twitter if you aren't already. I'm at Paddy Johnston.
I'm at Rob_Sherman.
And I'm at Robert_Gordon_.
So yes, do tweet us to tell us how great the podcast is and how much you like it.
Or maybe if they have suggestions for themes, that might be a good idea.
Yes, we could do.
Now we've all done
crowdsource themes.
After next time, we'll all have done one. It might be interesting.
Yeah, we've had a request already.
Have we?
So I'm going to make my next theme, which is Mean Girls.
Oh yes, we did have that.
Girls. I like it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Not like sequels or fan fiction.
I'm going to write fan
Mean
fiction.
Girls.
I'm going to write fan fiction
Because it came out that I've never seen Mean Girls.
Well, you need to watch it. Though.
I know.
We can watch it now.
We could watch it now.
It's a great film.
It's amazing.
It's great.
I'm thinking a body horror sequel to Mean Girls.
Of course you are. I'm along the same lines as well.
Glenn Keiko, he starts growing tentacles.
Yeah, that's where I would start as well.
Okay, that's going to be episode 4.
Mean Girls.
Yes.
Okay.
Mean Girls.
But yeah.
Okay, so thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you in a few weeks with episode 3.
Bye.